Hey, Tburrier from Tburrier.com. Do you want to be successful in sales? Do you want to be really good in your relationships? Then what you know doesn't really matter much. I know that may be counterintuitive, but the key here is to understand that questions are the answer. And there's one specific style of question that is it's my go-to. I mean, there are 9 different kinds of questions that I teach when I'm training groups and teaching salespeople or teaching home business people, and even when I'm teaching leadership in a corporation for them to navigate the relationships and getting the work done with their management and those in their charge. There's one specific question that is my go-to, and it's a powerful question. It's called a clarifying question. So I'm going to give you a little insight on how to use a clarifying question and what it is right now, because this single thing, learning this single skill, which is very simple to learn, can make a huge difference in your results with people and in your results in business. All right. So what is a clarifying question? It's a question to determine the context and the meaning of what someone is saying. And this is absolutely huge because there's always a massive gap between what someone believes you're saying and what you're actually saying, and vice versa. And that there's a lot of factors for that. You have the lens, you have the image, you have personality types, you have motivations, you have assumptions, you have all these different things that come to bear. I teach this in communication training. This helps ferret all that out, because it's pretty normal, right, for someone to say yada, 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 and you're like, oh yeah, well, bah, 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 because you think you know exactly what they're saying, when in fact, you probably don't, right? I mean, you just probably don't. You just got to be real about that. Not to mention the other aspects of this particular type of question. You would want what this brings from a fruit perspective anyway. Even if you do know what someone's saying, it's best to do this anyway. Because when you ask a clarifying question, what you're doing is inviting that person to go deeper, which in fact assures that you actually know what they're saying, right? The last thing you want to do is respond to something that someone said and respond inappropriately in the wrong context or from the wrong perspective, because you didn't really understand what they're saying. Because then what you're doing is saying to this person, hey, I don't really get you. Yeah, I'm not really connecting with you. That's the message that they get. You're breaking rapport. When you ask them to go deeper, you're showing that you care. You're showing that you're seeking to understand. And that is building rapport and deepening the relationship, regardless of how well you understand, regardless of what your knowledge base is. Remember, in a conversation, the best way to be is about them, not about you, right? No, nobody ever learned anything by running their trap, right? and so you're not trying to impress someone with how much you know, right? You want to impact someone with how much you care, because if they understand that you care, they're going to be wide open to whatever you have to say. And so if you recognize that the way the flow happens in getting a point across to someone is, first they have to have some measure of trust in you. If they're having a discussion with you, there's some trust. It's probably not super deep, but depending on how well you know someone, it could be real deep. But for most of the conversations you're ever going to have, it's not real deep. When you try to understand them and you really seek to understand, right, that trust begins to go deeper. And when they believe that you understand, right, this is important. This is why you can't shortcut it. When they believe that you understand, then whatever you have to offer or whatever input you have to give is going to be more received. So when do you use a clarifying question? After someone says something, after they make their statement. Instead of the natural impulse, right, is to respond and say what you have to say or present what you have or whatever that is. Don't do that. Take a breath. I teach this specifically in the 3 Circles book in the relationship chapter. But you want to take a breath. Instead of talking, instead of using your impulse, ask a clarifying question. Now, you can ask one of 2 kinds of clarifying questions. You can ask an open-ended clarifier or a closed-ended clarifier. So a closed-ended clarifier would be something like, so are you saying that ... right? And if they say yes, now you're in a position to ask the next question, which is what you should do instead of go ahead and tell them everything. Ask the next question to get them to go deeper. You've just confirmed, right, what's going on. Or the most The best one to use, right, is an open-ended clarifier, where essentially you're saying, what do you mean by that? But if you say, what do you mean by that, you have to make sure you have the proper inflection. You can't say, what do you mean by that, right? Because that's offensive. You can say, so what do you mean by that? Or more appropriately and better used is to say, what do you mean when you say boom, 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 right? What do you mean when you say da da? Help me understand. And so what you've done is open the gate for them to go, well, what I'm trying to say is da da da. And they may rephrase what they said, but they probably won't. They will say something different and give you a little more information so that you get true context and true meaning. And then you can choose to keep following that thread, or you can then say, oh, so you're saying da da da, and you can close the loop and then take the conversation in a different direction if you want. This is an incredibly powerful skill to develop. And I say it's a skill, it's not that hard, but the actual focus, you've got to use good listening skills, and you've got to be focused, right? When someone is speaking, you don't just listen to their words, right? That's a tiny piece. You gotta take in their inflections and their tonality and their gestures and, using their hands like I do. You got to see how their body language is. So you got to see how you're trying to interpret feeling and context, because if you get those two things, you will make deep connections with people, and doing business becomes relatively easy, and building strong relationships becomes relatively easy. Doesn't mean you won't mess up a few times. You're human, but man, will this make your life easier. So work on your clarifying questions, and it'll have a big impact. So if you want more training, make sure you check out Tburrier.com. I have a lot of blogs with all kinds of training topics for business, whether it's a corporate business or home business. I support both of those venues. If you have a question, my email is below. You can shoot me an email. And of course, if you haven't gotten the 3 Circles Living book, if you read that book, it will make a significant, if you read that book and you implement it, it'll make a significant difference in the way your life works. All right? Have a great day.